Recording in progress.
Hello, this is Chris Murdoch from Revelation and Restoration Academy of Music and Drama. Welcome to today's journey through the wonderful world of harmony in gospel music and hymns. Dear Jesus, thanks for giving your life for us. Thanks for yourself. Thanks for the gift of music to praise you with. Help us to use this gift well. Help us glorify you with it. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, first, before we get into harmony, well, the harmony has to be built around the melody, so let's start with the melody. This is a tune from a hymn I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Jesus Loves Me. And it looks like the visualization on the screen lagged a little bit behind during the first phrase. But by the time we got to the third phrase, which was the same, you could see how it was being played. Okay. Now, if that's the melody, how do we know what harmony goes with it? Well, for one thing, sometimes we'll just have all the notes, the melody and the harmony, written out on a staff for us. That's one reason it's very important to learn how to read staff music. For another thing, sometimes even if we don't have that, we have the lyrics and maybe the melody written out on a staff and chord symbols above it. So, let's say we've got, there we go. Let's say above that line, there's a symbol for the C chord. So here we go. And then, the next line, let's say it's got an F/C above it. That means F chord, but with the C on the bottom. One way to do that is just invert it in the left hand. So we've got the F and the A, but then not the C up here, but the C down here. That's called the second inversion of the F chord. Many of you already may know that, depending on who's watching. And then, let's say we've got the C chord symbol there. So, we've got chords in the left hand, we've got melody in the right hand. That's pretty basic, and sometimes we want that. Other times, we want to be even more basic and play just the melody, which we started out with. And other times, we want to be a little less basic. We want to do a little more. Let's say we want to do more. Well, how do we know what harmony we could add in the right hand? Because so far, we've played the melody alone, and we played the melody in the right hand and chords in the left hand. But to harmonize it in the right hand, well, one thing we could do is we could try a third or a fourth below the melody note. So what's a third or a fourth below? Well, the melody starts on G. G for Jesus, as the late great brother Lance Appleton would say. It starts on G. And what's the thirds down from that? Well, we count down 3 letter names, counting the one we start on, and we've got E. It's just, we're skipping a letter name. That's giving us a third. So so far it sounds really good. So, when the melody note is G, we add a harmony note below that, E. When the melody note is E, we add a harmony below that, C. It's always a third below. Now I put what I had been doing with the left hand, with the chords in the left hand, back with what was going on in the right hand. It's a little bit fuller sounding than just the melody in the right hand and the chords in the left hand. There's the chord and there's the melody. But what else can we do? Well, we can keep going and see whether this whole thing about a third below the melody always works, or if it sometimes has to be a fourth. I mentioned putting in a third or a fourth below. Well, does the fourth always work? Does the third always work? Let's try a fourth below. It's a different style, but it could work. However, it wouldn't work with the chords. Oops. It just doesn't sound right. But, let's see if the thirds always sound right. They've sounded right so far. Let's try the second half of the verse with all thirds in the right hand and the chords in the left hand. That A there at the end doesn't sound quite right. So, the rest of it sounded right with thirds. And yes, we were playing a third down from the melody note because the melody note was C, and we played an A below that. So what gives? Why did the fourths sound different and not really fit with the chords, though they would be okay as a style on their own without the chords? And why did the thirds mostly fit with the chords, but not completely? Well, usually when you play a third or below the melody note, you want that note to be part of the chord. That's how it fits in best most of the time. These thirds work because most of the time I'm playing a note that's part of the chord as the added harmony note. Here's the C chord, C, E, G. And the right hand, melody, the third below that, put that together. Notice, most of the melody notes are from the chord, G, E, E, D. That D is the only note that's not part of the chord in the melody, because the chord is C, E, and G. Likewise, if we're going down a third from every melody note, the only time we're not playing an added harmony note that's part of the chord is when the melody is playing D, which is not part of the chord either, and the harmony is playing B, a third from that. But we don't stay on that long. Most of the time, the melody note and the harmony note are right there with the chord. the melody note and the harmony note are two of the three notes of the chord, C, E, G. So that's why it sounds so good with those thirds there. What about... So we went from C to second inversion F, F major with the C on the bottom, and what was the melody? A, C, 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 G, G, and right after the melody switches to G, the chord switches back to C major, which has the C, E, and G, the melody note. So, yeah, C, F, A, and the melody is A, C. Yeah, it's taking chord notes most of the time. And if we go down a third, yeah, what's the third down from A? Oh, of course, F. So we're still using notes of the chord. Oh, look. For the by A, C against F, F, A. Future Farmers of America? But yeah, the added harmony notes are part of that C, F, A that the left hand is playing too. For the Bible tells me. There, when we get to me, I didn't change the chord back to C until we got to so. But the melody and the added harmony note didn't come off of the F and A part of the F chord more than one beat before the chord changed. The right hand melody note, the G, and the right hand harmony note, the E, were from the chord we were about to go to. That's called anticipation, when we use a note from the chord that we're about to go to, even when the chord hasn't changed yet. We could do it that way and change the chord at the same time, but it just sounds a little better, I think, rhythmically, if we change the chord on the word so. Because it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We are changing the chord on a strong beat. In a 4-beat measure, it's beats 1 and 3 that are the two strong beats, and beats 2 and 4 are the two weak beats. But yeah, again, so far the thirds below the melody sound great. But that's because they're mostly with the chord. That third line is the same as the first, just different words. Little ones to him belong. Okay, what about the fourth line? Oh, this time I did mostly thirds, but remember, oops. Remember, that sounded weird with the C and the A. Why? Because the A was not part of the chord. C, E, and G. So, that's the trick. If you're doing, if you find that mostly thirds are, thirds below the melody are part of the chord, then stick with those thirds most of the time. Stick with those thirds when they're part of the chord, or when you're just coming off the chord in the melody for a moment, and you end up with a harmony note that's off of the chord for a moment, like a beat or two. But, C and A there against C, E, and G doesn't sound so good because the A is not part of the chord. That's where we would switch to fourths, or to a fourth right there. C down a fourth is G. Ah, yeah. Strong, he is strong. Now, we could play. We could just go from the F/C chord to the C major chord and just stay there. Or we could do, that's changing from the C to an inversion of the G chord. G, B, D, but the B is on the bottom. We could say G/B. It's the G first inversion. But if we do that, then that third he is strong on the he, that third below the melody note, because the melody is E and the third below is C, that doesn't sound right. But why? See if you can figure it out based on what we've said so far. Oh, yes. It should be a B because the C is not part of the chord, but B is. B, D, G. And then, when the melody moves down from E to D, we can keep the we can keep the harmony where it is. We're just changing a fourth to a third, and we're staying with a note that's part of the chord, because the B is part of the chord. So, there we go. One way to harmonize a melody is use a third or fourth below it, but usually keep that third or fourth part of the chord. Okay, so we've spent about almost 2/3 of our time, maybe, on that one song, Jesus Loves Me, and that's more of a hymn, but I want to show you how this can apply to gospel styles. And I want to show you how you can I want to show a little bit, not too much because I'm focusing on harmony mostly this time, but a little bit about how you can make the accompaniment in the left hand a little more interesting too. Because so far we've just had blocked chords, that is, chords with all the notes together. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. But I would like to look at the song, and you may know this one. When pangs of death seized on my soul, unto the Lord I cried, till Jesus came and made me whole, I would not be denied. Now if we play it like that, it sounds more like just a hymn. But it's actually, it's kind of a combination hymn and gospel song. It's old enough to be considered a hymn, and it's got the hymn structure. A lot of times the contemporary worship songs will have verses like 2 verses, a chorus, and a bridge. This has 3 verses and a chorus and no bridge. So it's got kind of the hymn structure, but really, it was probably written as more of a gospel style. And yeah, we can apply what we learned about harmonizing to it. A fourth down, because a third down wouldn't be part of the chord. We've got the C chord, but then next melody note is E. A third down is part of the chord because it's a C. Next melody note is a G. A third down is part of the chord because it's the E. We can apply what we've learned, but we can also add some things to it just to make it sound more like a gospel song versus a hymn. That way we can be versed in both styles as the Spirit leads. Okay, so that's a hymn style. But very often when we're playing gospel style, it's very often with hymns as well, but especially, well, I would say it's very likely both times that we'll have somebody singing with us, maybe even a lot of people, though hymn style is more likely than gospel style not to have somebody singing, just to be instrumental. But if you've got other people singing, then you don't always have to play that melody, as long as people know what the melody is supposed to be, and they know where they're supposed to be as far as the timing. So we can take the chords. This is still harmonization. We can take the chords, maybe they're written in, maybe we can see what the chords are by seeing that there are a lot of C's, E's, and G's in this measure. So we know it's a C chord. Or maybe it's not all written out on the staff, but we've got the chord symbol above it. It's the C chord. So we can put that same harmony, the chord, to a different pattern, like when pangs of death seized on my soul. It's lagging a little bit. I'll try it again. Yeah, there we go. When pangs of death seized on my soul, unto the Lord I cried, till Jesus came and made me whole. I would not be denied. Okay. So the left hand is just alternating between the root and the fifth of the chord. And the right hand is playing the chord, but we're going back and forth between the hands, between the left hand and the right hand. It's kind of a clunk, 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 clunk. What are we doing there? Oh, well, the chord is G, so we're inverting it in the right hand, B, D, G, just to make it an easier move from C, E, G. G chord is technically G, B, D, that's the root position, but that G can be on the top. Or, well, it can be on the top in the right hand, but on the bottom in the left hand. There we go. So G is the first of the chord, D is the fifth, because G, A, B, C, D, yeah, that's 5 letter names. Unto the Lord I, and back to the C. And we can, we're just, well, so far we're doing just eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And or we might say, if we're using the Kodai approach, but we can be some more, we can be more creative than that. Change every other eighth note to a pair of 16th notes. We could do that. That's one way we could do that. So that's a little bit about adding some stylistic things that aren't really about the harmony, but we're using those chords in the process, which are the basis of the harmony, and using that to. That's a little bit about using extra things to change the style. Like I said, we want to be versed in both styles, hymn and gospel style, as the Spirit leads. But getting back to harmonizing, what if all we have is the melody written out and no chord structure? Ooh. then, well, the more that we practice our ear, the more that we can get this. But as we get to where we can hear it, to where we can hear which harmony notes go right with the melody, then we can use that to figure out chords. When pangs of... In fact, at the beginning we don't need to really have that ear, though it's good and it's important. It's just we can figure out the first chord anyway without needing to use that musical ear yet, because we've got C, E, G. We just know C, E, G makes this C major chord. When pangs of death. Well, we're still using notes of the C chord. C, E, G, G, G. We could just stay on the G chord, the C chord that whole time. When pangs of death. Ooh. So I'm playing the melody, but I'm making the whole chord below it by the time I get to the G. When pangs of death seized. Ooh. Well, what about seized? Well, we could try a third below that A, or we could try a fourth below that A. What sounds better? Again, the more we practice it, the more we'll get our ears used to it and be able to figure that out. When pangs of death seized on, or when pangs of death seized on. And I'm just keeping that bottom note the same. So what sounds better? When pangs of death seized. Oh, that's the A and a fourth down to the E. Or when pangs of death seized. That's the A and a third down to the F. What sounds better? I think it fits more with the style to have the A and the third down to the F. So if we're keeping the C there, what chord is that? It's inverted. But if we stack it up to look like thirds, by jumping this C up the octave, then we can tell it's F, A, C. We won't actually do that when we're playing it, but when we're playing the song, but that helps us see what it is, what chord it is. So we can write down, maybe we're trying to write a chord structure out. When pangs, okay, we can write a C above that. Of death seized, we can write an F above that. And maybe even an F/C, because we're playing that F inverted with the C on the bottom. On my... well, if we had death, C, E, G, C major chord, and then seized on, we might as well try and see if, since we're coming back to the same melody note so soon, we can see if the same chord fits with it. On my soul. It does, and in fact, since G, E, E, D, C, most of the notes starting there are from the C chord again, just that D is not. It's passing between the E and C. We call that a passing tone. We can figure, okay, a C chord will work there too. So we can put a C there above my, as in, when pangs of death seized on my... Alright, we can put it above on, seized on. There, we would change back to the C chord. My soul. And we could keep doing that, like, on, two... And this time I'm not playing the whole chord, but, two... So, we can say, does a third fit? D down to B, or fourth, D down to A. Or I think D down to B. Unto the... So, we could just play that. Since it's not staying there very long, we could just play that B and D. We're not talking about what the left hand is doing yet. That might be another story for another time, because we're just about out of time for today. But the right hand could just do that D and that B. But if we're wanting to know what the left hand could do with it, or we want the right hand to play a full chord, we can do D, down to B, down to G. A G chord. We already had two of those notes, the D and the B, so that kind of suggested it. We could even add an F with it. That makes it a G7 chord. Unto the... Yeah. And so, how do we know, though, maybe if we don't have that ear developed yet, that D down to B would fit better than D down to A? Well, it's a good guess because we're in the key of C. And the strongest chords in the key of C are C, built on the first note of the scale, and then if we go up the scale, C, D, E, F, F, built on the fourth note of the scale, and if we walk up to the fifth note, G. The strongest chords in a key, if we're going by just naturally occurring strongest chords, rather than chords that we might make stronger just by using them more because we want to in a particular style or a particular song, the naturally occurring strongest chords are built on the 1 and the 4 and the 5 of the scale. C, F, G. So, when we had that D note in the melody, we could think, okay, it's very likely it's going to use a strong chord, like G is a strong chord in the key of C. So, the next note in the G chord below the D would be B. And the whole chord would be G. Yeah. It makes sense. Alright. So we're a little bit over time, but maybe we'll be able to continue this. Maybe this will be our topic next time. By the way, this is the first time I've used this keyboard visualizer here from MIDIdisplay.com in any of these videos. Let me know what you think. Do you like it better this way? Or when I have the camera tilted down and the camera angle turned upside down so that you see me upside down but you see the keys of my piano right side up? Alright. And of course you see them right side up virtually in this visualizer. Let me know which one you like better. Alright. This is Chris Murdoch signing off for Jesus and for Revelation and Restoration Academy of Music and Drama. Have a blessed day.